best shot at the moment. Not that much is going to happen. And it almost, oh, there's a left hook.
And just like that, the dream is over. Mike Tyson has always said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Jake Paul had this plan, as flawed as it was. Jake Paul had this plan to revitalize, to save the sport of boxing. And with one punch to the mouth, the dream is over. Look, I like Jake Paul. I respect anyone who has a dream and does everything possible to make that dream a reality, especially when everyone else is telling you it's not possible. On some level, I can relate to Jake Paul. When I quit my job to pursue YouTube full-time, everyone told me I was making a mistake. Everyone thought I was going to fail. Here we are 5 years later. Those same doubters are now asking me how to make it on YouTube. So I respect the fact that Jake Paul wanted to be a professional boxer. I respect the fact that he made his dream a reality. But just because you're a professional, just because you train or you put on a pair of boxing gloves, that does not mean that you will be perceived as legitimate. It doesn't mean people will be willing to pay to watch you fight. Me personally, I was done with Jake Paul after the pretend fight that he had with Mike Tyson last year. Clearly, I'm not the only one, because viewership for his fight last weekend with Anthony Joshua, it was significantly lower than a real fight between Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the main channels in the description below. There are a lot of allegations right now that the fight between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua was rigged, or it was supposed to be rigged. According to the conspiracy theories, Jake Paul was supposed to win the fight, but Anthony Joshua decided to knock his ass out anyway. If it was supposed to be rigged, it would not be the first time that a fight in boxing was stained with corruption. But either way, it doesn't matter, because interest in seeing Jake Paul fight is on the decline. His fight last weekend averaged 33 million views on Netflix. Now, to his credit, that is a great number, but the fight between Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford, it drew almost 42 million. Jake Paul's fight last year with Mike Tyson, it drew over 100 million. Before moving to Netflix, where subscribers don't have to pay additional fees to watch the fight, before moving to Netflix, Jake Paul's buy rates on pay-per-view were declining. His first two fights in 2021, 500,000 people paid to see it. His last pay-per-view fight in 2024, it drew a measly 68,000 buys. Now, with a star of Jake Paul's caliber, you would think people would be willing to pay to see him fight. There would be a lot of mainstream interest. During the 80s and 90s and even part of the early 2000s, Mike Tyson was must-see TV. Same with Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, Brock Lesnar in UFC. When Brock Lesnar was on the card, everyone was watching. But with Jake Paul, the interest was always tied to a gimmick. The YouTuber who became a boxer. He was fighting other YouTubers. He was fighting legitimate fighters who were years past their prime. Basically, people were paying to see a disaster. For a while, you can get away with it, but there always comes a point where you will be expected to perform. There always comes a point where you either step up or you step aside. Now, I am not a boxing purist, but I am willing to pay to watch big fights. Haven't paid for a UFC fight in years. Why? Because UFC doesn't have a star who generates enough interest. Jake Paul has the star power, but he doesn't have the legitimacy. I have watched a few of his fights over the years. Every time I do, I feel like I wasted my time and my money. The truth is, it's boring. There's nothing exciting about watching Jake Paul fight. He doesn't give me a reason to want to watch him again. Leading up to the fight last weekend, it didn't feel like it was a big deal. It didn't feel important. Last year, leading up to the fight with Mike Tyson, it was huge. It was a can't-miss event. When my wife is telling me on Monday that we are watching the fight on Friday night, you know you have captured the interest of the mainstream. But this fight with Anthony Joshua, it just felt like no one cared. And it also feels like the grift is over. The polish has melted off the turd. I could be wrong. Jake Paul has proven that he is resilient. There is no denying his ambition. But with each fight, it seems to get less and less important. It's not as special. And with Jake Paul losing the way that he did, with viewership declining almost 70%, Anthony Joshua might have KO'd Jake Paul's career as a mainstream draw, a mainstream boxer. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.